Runaway rates, consumer prices going up almost across the board as officials try to rein in inflation and lower the cost of living. It's an affordability crisis. Inflation jumped to 6.7% in March. That's a 31-year high and, of course, greater than expert projections. Meanwhile, the Bank of Canada hiked its key interest rate in an effort to curb that inflation. But has inflation actually peaked, or can you expect even greater spikes? And how are politicians addressing the inflation nation issue? The Scrum is here to talk about the politics of inflation. Joyce Napier is the CTV Ottawa bureau chief. Marika Walsh is a political reporter for the Globe and Mail. And our special guest is Amanda Lang, host of BNN Bloomberg. All right, good morning to everyone. Amanda, let's just get at the economics of this. Experts are saying the surge of inflation is temporary. It's caused by all sorts of things, supply chain disruptions, the war in Ukraine. Where's this going?
Well, we can say that it has peaked because we measure inflation year over year, and we're about to get to a year ago number that was already high. So the big jumps will be behind us just mathematically, but the price increases in real terms will stick around. This comes to this question of what is transitory, how long does it last? And the ultimate reason we worry about that, Evan, is when you and I insist on a higher wage, when our service providers raise their prices, when products at the grocery store go up, they don't tend to go down easily. And that is therefore entrenched price increasing. And that's where we are. The next few months will say how high they stay, but we don't see prices coming down. Once our plumber has raised his price, rarely does he offer a lower one down the road. Yeah. Prices go up, salaries go down. Joyce, how is the affordability issue being tackled by politicians? How are they trying to address this? What are you seeing?
Well, what I see is kind of an interesting mixture of fantasy and reality. And of sloganeering. You know, slogans are really good. Just inflation, that really sounds good. But is it really true? You know, maybe just the spending, the government spending, yes, was it one of the causes of inflation? Perhaps, but a small part of it, a very small part of it was due to that. And what would have, for instance, a politician like Pierre Poilievre, who is running to be the leader of the Conservative Party, what would he have done? Would he have not spent that money? So I find that there's a lot of that. You know, they sort of put reality and fiction or good slogans sort of in a martini shaker, and they shake it all up and then serve it to the public, and it sounds really good and it's very catchy at those big rallies, and people, you know, seem to be quite happy with what they hear. But unfortunately, what they hear is not necessarily either a solution or even, you know, even sometimes close to what actually the causes of what we're living now actually are.
Marika, let's start at the government. This is something that Justin Trudeau, as he's trying to sell the budget across the country, is trying to talk about. Does he have the puzzle piece to put something together that resembles a solution?
Well, they're saying they do. They say that the budget shows that in things that try to spur housing, for example, and the supply of housing. They talk a lot about ensuring that there is that supply. The problem for the government is that those are longer-term issues that they are going to address, longer-term fixes that do not address the immediate concerns of Canadians when they're at the pump, when they're at the grocery store, when they're going about their daily lives. And that's why it's such a potent attack line from the opposition parties, from the Conservatives, and on the Conservative leadership race trail, because people are feeling it. It does feel real to them, as Amanda spelled out earlier. And so the government has not as many tools to address the immediacy of it.
Amanda, so what do economists say about the power of governments to do anything?
You know, Joyce is getting at, I think, the key point here, which is that these are complex issues. The solutions to them are hard, and they often miss the mark. So the central bank and any fiscal policymakers are trying to walk a very narrow line where, yes, they want to cool prices, but they don't want to collapse the housing market. They want to slow down inflation, but they don't want to trigger a recession in Canada. But the fact of the matter is, those are actually potential outcomes here. If you actually want to slow down it, how do you get the plumber to lower his rates? you cause a recession and you make business scarce for that man, he will offer you a better rate. So I would say we shouldn't let the opposition parties get away with oversimplification. Stop them in their tracks. And the federal government, you could have a whole conversation about fiscal side of this and whether if they raise taxes, it would have a really cooling effect. If they stopped spending so much, a cooling effect. That should be where the opposition party is focusing, not on some kind of weird hazy idea that they're not doing something they might otherwise do. It's very hard stuff.
But the politics of inflation, though, Marika, I'm looking. Joyce mentioned Pierre Poilievre. He said the Bank of Canada says Bitcoiners lack financial literacy. Of course, he's big into crypto and Bitcoin. This from the same people who promised we'd have deflation right before inflation hit a 30-year high. It is our central bank that is financially illiterate. What do you make of the politics of attacking institutions like the central bank when people are genuinely frustrated as they try to understand inflation?
Well, to Amanda's earlier point, it's sloganeering that we know from past election campaigns, past leadership campaigns, that it does actually work to rally a group of people to attack institutions, especially an institution like the Bank of Canada that operates really not in the front headlines of day-to-day life in Canada, Evan. I think, though, to the point of what happens now, the budget has spelled out what the government will do with inflation. And to Amanda's point, they're not raising taxes or dramatically ending their deficit spending, although it is less than the pandemic. And so that leaves then the difficult choices to the Bank of Canada. And the question is, how fast do they raise rates now?
All right, thanks. I got to leave it there for now. Amanda Lang from B&M Bloomberg, thanks for joining us.